Hello, it's Froggy Friday once again. Favourite day of the week, where froggy madness seems to just take over. So I'm going to jump straight into it. We've got 2 frogs this week for you, same technique, 2 different outcomes. So I'm just popping some clear resin into the first frog. And again, I'm just doing it as I have done for every other video up to about the bottom of his legs. And then I stick that in my curing machine. This is the airless resiners machine and it's fantastic. So now that's fully cured, my idea was to do some UV dots and try and do the technique using that. So I started off with using some clear thick viscosity resin. I used the diction. The trio bundle is absolutely fantastic. Comes in a package of 3 different viscosities, a high, a low and a medium. And yeah, literally just works for every need. So all I'm doing here is on top of the cured resin, just dropping little dots of UV resin all over and then curing that with my lamp. Because of the viscosity of the resin, it meant that I didn't have to cure it one by one, so I end up doing a couple of dots and then curing it. So because I was sick of continuously getting my big lamp out and I couldn't work, I thought, right, I can do this with my little one and just drop a dot and semi-cure it as I was going. And this little light is really handy, like I've said in other videos. And the products I use are linked in the description. So yeah, it was much easier just to keep the lamp on it while I put the dots because I didn't need that much time in between. I'm going to speed this bit up for you because it did take a bit. So originally my idea was just the one frog. It didn't turn out that way because I wanted to change these dots into the neon green by Let's Resin. So I started off, popped a little bit of the green powder into a little cup and put some UV resin into it. As I've said before, when using the neon powders, doesn't matter which brand you're using, you really have got to give them a good mix because they end up really gritty and bitty otherwise. So I tried popping this into a needle nose tip bottle. That really didn't work because there just wasn't enough and I only needed a little bit. So I thought, right, I'm going to get my dotting tool and we're just going to go over the dots with the neon green. Now the reason I didn't go in straight with the neon green was because I couldn't get the dots perfect and the way I wanted them to. So I thought, right, next plan, let's start again and do 2 frogs. So I kept the original one and popped some more clear resin into the bottom of this frog and then popped that into my curing machine. And once that was fully cured, I now had a normal base. So I thought, right, this is going to have to do. This is the only way that I'm going to get some form of dot. So I got a different dotting tool and proceeded to put lime green dots all over this frog. And the reason it didn't matter whether the dots were absolutely perfect is because I changed my mind on what I was actually going to do with this. So I've now got 2 frogs, one with the neon green dots and one with just clear UV dots. So after popping that under my UV lamp, you can see there are various different size dots and yeah, so none of them are actually completely uniform, which I'm a bit fanatical with really. I think a bit of OCD kicks in. So back to the original frog that I did with the clear UV dots. So I decided to get some pearlescent acrylic paints from Amsterdam. Now these are only little bottles off Amazon, but they are absolutely stunning, particularly for paint pouring. So I'm just getting a little paintbrush and I'm painting over each one of these little dots. Now it does look like white paint, but because it's a pearlescent colour change, it has got like a green flash to it, which is absolutely stunning. And there was a pack of 8, I think these are all various colours. So this did take a while to paint over the dots, but at least this way I knew that my dots were going to be perfectly round the way I wanted them to be. So again, this video is a lot of dots. So I am going to speed you through most of the dotting process because you really don't need to see me painting a load of dots. Now you see me here trying to use a needle tip bottle, which to be honest did work all right. Yeah, I didn't need to put too much in, and as long as I just put it in the nib, then it was fine. And that just gave me a little bit more control over where I was popping the acrylic paint. So back to the first frog. So now this UV was fully cured, I mixed up some more resin. The resin I used is the craft resin 1:1 ratio. Discount codes are in the description, and I'm just putting a very, very thin layer just to cover the top of these little blobs. So I'm just trying to make sure that it goes in all the little corners and grooves. I literally just needed a small layer to be able to do what I needed to do for the next part. I needed to fit another 3 layers onto this for what I had in mind, so I obviously couldn't go too much because otherwise I'd have run out of room. So I popped that into my curing machine. Now that was fully cured, it was time for the next part. And I think he's looking kind of cool already, to be honest. So once again, I popped some UV resin into a little cup, and this time I added the Let's Resin Neon Yellow to this one. So my idea was to go and do another layer of dots, this time using the yellow. So I'm only popping a little bit into my cup and then giving that a good mix to make sure that there are no lumps or gritty bits inside. And then I continue to do exactly the same with the yellow. So little dots, trying not to go over the original green dots that are underneath. And again, I'm just curing this one by one as I go, making sure that the part is out of the way of the UV lamp. And of course, I am not in direct sunlight. I tend to like working at night when I'm using UV, because you can guarantee, because I work in a well-ventilated area, my kitchen back door is always open when I'm working, even though I'm freezing. Yeah, so I just continued to go on with this yellow all the way across the body. Once that was done and fully cured, it was time for the next layer of clear resin. So I did exactly the same as I did before and just filled it up a couple of millimetres just so that it come above the top of the yellow dots this time. Now I know this is very repetitive, but honestly it is worth it in the end. So to the second frog. This has had all the little dots coated with the acrylic paint. So I've mixed up some more resin and then I've added some black pigment paste to this. My black is always the Team U. I find it fantastic, but I thought, right, to add a little bit extra to this, let's see if this same paint with the green shift works within resin and see whether you can actually see it. So I'm giving this a good mix in. I didn't want to put in too much because again that can affect the curing ability of the resin. But giving it a good mix. At this point I could see like a little shimmer of green, so I knew it was working. I do end up putting a little touch more in, but I'm making sure that this is mixed well, and then I pour it onto the top of the frog with the dots on. This time I am filling it all the way up to the top and all in his legs. Now, as you know, if you've seen any of my Friday Froggy videos, the legs are the thing that takes me the while. I am, again, a bit fanatical with the legs. I am petrified of the toes coming off. So I make sure that there is enough resin all in the gaps, the grooves, and to prevent bubbles from underneath his chin, I go in them with the dotting tool. I didn't quite have enough resin, so I used a bit that was for another project and just mixed that in with what was already there, and there was enough pigment left in the cup. I added a little bit more of the paint, give that a good mix, and then topped up the rest of the frog. So because this takes so long, I have sped this up a bit for you. So while we're speeding through my Mission Impossible leg filling, I'd just like to mention that this video is in collaboration with the Froggy Friday crew, which started off with the original Lisa at Girl in the Garage, Gert at Gert Creates, Lula at Nerd Goblin Art, got Karen from the Dragon's Cave, and Tim Watkins, the bass resonator. All fantastic artists, as well as many, many more fabulous creations every week. So as you can see here, I've just done exactly the same with the orange, and I've just created lots of dots all the way all over this frog. I've even done some little dots in his feet. So now that's fully cured, I've mixed up some resin, and now it's time for the final layer. So for this again, I'm using some black pigment paste from Temu, making sure that you give it a good mix to make sure that there's no excess pigment all sat at the bottom. And I'm just mixing it into my resin. You can see I literally just scraped my stick on it and then mixed it in. Now whenever I'm using pigment pastes, because they are a bit tricky and you can get unmixed paste on your stick, I do in fact wipe my stick on the edge of the cup, as you can see here. I give my stick a wipe with a baby wipe so that there's no excess pigment on the stick. And you can literally see how much I'm pulling off here, and then I mix it in again. Otherwise you do end up with some unmixed paste either on the end of the cup or in your piece. The other thing I like to do when I'm using particularly dark paste is check how deep the colour is. It can often be quite deceptive once it's in the cup, particularly when it's in little silicone cups like this. And you can't really tell on the end of your stick, but if you pop a little bit onto a wipe, you can see how dark the colour is. So I'm just pouring this all in this frog. And again, it's a mission because I'm making sure that there's no bubbles underneath that chin and in them legs. I don't know what's going on with my lighting here, but there's some serious flickering going on. So now it's time to demould. Now again, with these frogs, it drives me a bit crazy because I'm a bit fanatical about them little toes breaking off. I'd be devastated if I'd all that work and then I broke one of the toes off. So yeah, I'm really careful when I'm demoulding them, but oh my god, how cute is he? You can't really see the green flicker in it, but I'll try and get a video in a different light so you're able to see it better. But we're not finished there because in true Tony style, we have to finish him off with some bling. So for now, we'll just pop him to one side and it's time to demould the second frog. Now, this one looks such a mess on the bottom purely because I'd left the resin sitting for a different project way too long. And yeah, it was thick and it was gloopy and it was nasty when it went into this mould. So I just tried to get in as much as I could. Plus, when I went to put it in the curing machine, I accidentally spilt it. So I did have to top it up, which is why the resin had been sat there so long. So again, I'm going to speed this up for you. This didn't really make any difference to the frog itself because it's on the bottom. I did have a little bit of cleaning up and sanding to do, but other than that, I think he is absolutely gorgeous, and the dimensions of the 3 different colours on the 3 levels just give that really weird 3D vibe. I absolutely love him, but again, I'm going to bling him up or her up. And now comes the fun part, the blinging. So I thought, can't just do eyelashes on them because that would just be boring because I did that last week. So I thought, right, we're going to bling her up with some little gems and some eyelashes and some little extra bits. So for this one, for both of them, I am just using my paint acrylic markers to put the whites in their eyes. I do this to both frogs. Now with any future frogs that I do, I figured out a way of making little eyes for them with little cabochons. So I'll be showing you that process in the next coming weeks once I've perfected it. So after I've painted the eyes white, I'm now popping some little eyelashes on them. So yeah, they've got to have the eyelashes, haven't they? But these ones, rather than being the individuals that I used in last week's video, which is linked above, I'm using a pack of old strip lashes that were hanging about the house. So I've had to cut these up into 3 pieces to make them fit, and I'm just popping them on the eyes. At the minute, because they're new, they've still got that sticky bit on, so I thought that would be enough, but I do UV resin them on later on. So I'm just doing the other eye. And this was quite fiddly, to be honest. I think the individuals were probably easier to do. These were quite difficult to cut up and bend and measure so that they looked right. So yeah, I think I'll be sticking to the individuals from now on. I'm going to have to barter with my daughter to let me use the black individuals from the last week's box. But yeah, I think she looks really cute with these eyelashes on. So this is where the devastation kicks in. My little one got hold of the frog and dropped him and snapped his leg off. And 2 of his toes, but we could only find 1 of his toes. The other one went walkabouts. So I'm just trying to UV these feet on. And you can imagine, because of how bad I am with these frogs, I was devastated. I could have cried. And I thought, before I could take pictures as well. I mean, she's like a destruction devil, honestly. She's like a mini Tasmanian devil. She destroys anything she touches. I mean, she's only 15 months old, but yeah, still. But anyway, I digress. So I've got these little cute crowns that I've got for my little bears that I like to do themed for the holidays. And I thought these would be perfect as little crowns for these frogs. So I use one on each and just use some UV resin to cure it on to make sure that it's secure. So now it's time to bling her up a bit. So for this I'm using these little gems. Now they haven't got any sticky backs to them and they are tiny, and as you can see it's a massive bag full. So I'm just sticking some UV resin. The UV resin I'm using here is a different one compared to what I usually use. This is the Craft Resin UV resin, which I'm not that all impressed with, to be honest. So as you can see here, it was a bit fiddly. So I'm just dabbing it in the UV resin and then sticking these little gems onto his leg. So I did end up getting a pair of tweezers, but trying to pick these little beads up with tweezers was just hilarious. Honestly, it'd give you a right good laugh. But I persevered anyway and managed to stick about 5 onto each leg, curing them along the way so that they didn't fall off. As I've said, this was really quite fiddly, so therapeutic it was not. My stress levels were quite high at this point, and I'm starting to wonder whether I'd done the right thing by adding these little gems, constantly doubting myself. So while I'm doing this, I wanted to see whether we could make a thing of naming these frogs every week. So that I did try last week, and I think Gert come up with a fantastic one. Because she was a little frog with leaves in, she called her Luscious Leafy. So now she has a little dog tag round her neck with Luscious Leafy engraved onto it. Now my plan is to give these little tiny dog tags, all of them, so they've all got names, and pop them in a froggy village in my garden. So yeah, if anybody's got any names for these two, then please drop them in the comments. Also, if there's any frogs that you'd like to see made, yeah, just drop that in the comments as well, and I'll see what I can do. There's not really a lot that I haven't got, and if I haven't got it, I can always get it. So while I am sticking the rest of the eyelashes and the gems onto this frog, I just want to drop a little message to say that I am now a brand ambassador for Resin Supply. So down below in the description there's a cheeky little discount code that will give you 20% off every order. And that's where I had these little crowns from, funny enough, and my abalone shells that I use for my jewellery. So yeah, there's some fab resin supplies there. So now you can see these have got the eyelashes and the crown on, but he was still missing something. So I thought, right, I've got these little balloons that I also use for my themed teddy bears. And I thought he'd look so cute with the balloon tied round him. I didn't want to add too much or any of the gems to this one because I think the 3 dimensions of the different colours suit it really well. So after doing the back legs on this frog, I then done a few on the front legs just to finish it off. And then even though this has got like bendy wire inside it, I didn't want it coming off, especially if it was going to be in the garden. So I popped a little bit of UV resin on the bar and then UV'd that to the frog's leg. So I'm just finishing off the little gems on this one and giving it one last full cure. But these are the finished items. I think they look absolutely gorgeous. Same technique, 2 completely different looks. And don't forget to hop over to watch the rest of the playlist. So I'm going to leave you with some glamour shots. I've been Tony from Georgie's Gorgeous Gifts. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Stay safe, happy crafting, and bye for now.
Paint them spotted, paint them sleek. Some are bold, some unique. Every frog a masterpiece. Ribbit, ribbit, let's unleash.